A very good morning to all of you students and welcome to class 7, both Rose and Jasmine. I'm Sreyoshi Miss, as you all know, your English teacher, and today I'm going to teach you one literature chapter, the 3 questions written by Leo Tolstoy. Now, you must be wondering, many of you are wondering that who is Leo Tolstoy? At this young age, it's not possible for all of you to know a lot of things about Leo Tolstoy. He was a Russian author. He was born in the year 1828 in Russia and died in 1910. He was a fictional writer. Now, what are fictions? Fictions are based on imaginary stories. And he was also a realistic fiction writer. So, he was a master of realistic fiction and one of the world's greatest novelists. There are many works which are still read by the readers around the world, written by him. The name of these works are War and Peace, Anna Karenina, Boyhood, Childhood, The Kingdom of God is Within You, Power of Darkness, etc. He was a moral and realistic teacher. His doctrine of non-resistance to evil had an important influence on Gandhiji, our own Mahatma Gandhi. His writings are marked by great faith in God and are full of moral values. Now, the story that we are going to study today is the 3 questions. This is a short story which deals with the questions which the king wanted to know. The king wanted to have the answers of these questions so that he becomes successful in his life. He never faced any failure in his life. Now, we all know that all of us are empowered with infinite power. There are infinite potentialities that is within all of us. So, let's see how the king gets to know and gets a glimpse of his infinite potential that is there within him. I'm just reading the story. I will ask all the students' attention so that they listen to the story carefully and feel the urgency and the importance of being confident in our lives. Once a certain king gets a thought that he would never fail if he knew 3 things. These 3 things were: what was the right time to begin everything, who were the right people to listen to, and whom to avoid, and what was the most important thing to do. He proclaimed that the ones who give the right answers shall be rewarded. Many learned men attempted to answer the king's questions, but they all came up with different answers. In reply to the first question, some said that to know the right time for every action, one must draw up in advance a table of days, months, and years and must live strictly according to it. Only thus could everything be done at its proper time. Others declared that it was impossible to decide beforehand the right time for every action. The king decided that he needed to ask a wise hermit in a nearby village. Now the king reaches the place where the hermit lived. Now the hermit only allows people who are living a simple life. So in order to meet the hermit, the king puts on a simple dress and tells all his guards to stay away from the hermit's place. The hermit lived in the wood and would only see common people, however. So the king put on simple dress, left his guards behind, and went to see the hermit. When the king approached, the hermit was digging round in front of his hut. The king asked his questions, but the hermit went on digging, and the king offered to dig for him for a while. After digging for some time, the king again asked the questions. Before the hermit could answer, a man emerged from the woods. He was bleeding from a terrible stomach wound. So the king and hermit washed the wound and bandaged till the blood ceased. The king stayed the night in the hermit's hut. Next morning, the wounded man was doing better and was gazing intently at the king. He confessed to the king that he knew who the king was and what the king had executed his and that the king had executed his brother and seized his property. He had come to kill the king, but the king's guards had wounded him. The king forgives him and makes peace with his enemy and promised to restore the property to the wounded man. The king asked the hermit again for his answers. The hermit responded, and he had just had his questions answered. Hermit says that the king had pitied his weakness and had dug those beds for him. So the most important time was when the king was digging the beds. So what was the most important time? When the king was digging the bed was the most important time. He was the most important man. So who was the most important man? The king himself was the most important man. The most important time was when the king was attending to the wounded man and was the important man at that time. So while doing the work, the hermit made him realize the questions that the king was searching for answers are there in his hands, in his own deeds. So all of us must have faith in the deed, the action that we do. Rather than finding and worrying ourselves with the answers, with the meaningless answers, we should be very much confident about the eternal, the infinite and eternal potentialities that we are having within us. If we empower ourselves with the confidence and the infinite power that we are having, we can face any situation in our life. So the text, after reading this chapter, you will get to know that the chapter is full of the moral knowledge that we should have trust and faith in ourselves. Rather than finding for answers in external affairs, we should have faith in ourselves and we should behave accordingly. So now I would request all my students to go through the story which is there. The translation of the story is there in Google. If you search, you will get the story. And I will request all my students to think about the stories. And in the next class, I will ask you, what are the things you have learned from this chapter? How you realize that all of us are empowered with limitless, infinite power and energy within us. Now, I would request all of you to go through the chapter during these days and to empower yourselves with confidence and energy. So that's it for today. In the next class, we will decide and I will ask you some of the questions. I will give you some questions. You will think about the answers and you will try to write the answers of those questions. And since all of you are having holidays now, so I would tell you to write one story which awakened you, which gave you the glimpses of the inner power you are having. So I will encourage all my students and request all my students with the glimpse of the story that I taught you today, the 3 questions by Leo Tolstoy, you will also try to write one story yourself. Writing about your own experience always enables you to think about the deed, the action that you are doing, how you are helping others, or there are many actions which we do in our lives which we are not aware that our words or our task has caused any pain to any other person without thinking that we do that, and later on we realize. So I would request all my students to write a story, a short story after reading this chapter, and select a suitable title for it, and I would request you to write the story within 100 to 120 words. A short story based on your own experience in your life with the glimpse of the story that I taught you today. You please try and write one story. Okay, so when the school reopens, I will see the story that you have written in your copies. So bye for today. Have a good day.